Yo, it's Stack 612. On this episode of Roaches to Wrenches, we'll be pulling the blown engine out the Toyota Camry Hybrid. I want to start this off by saying this is one of the easiest engine jobs I've done. Not quite as easy as, say, a D16 Honda Civic, but not much harder. First, we remove the hood, which is attached to the hinges with four 12mm bolts. The struts can be popped off with a flat blade screwdriver. Lastly, there's a tube for the windshield washer fluid which runs alongside the passenger hood hinge. Once the hood is off, we go to the trunk and disconnect the regular battery as well as the hybrid battery pack. Once we do this, the rest of the job is just like any other modern vehicle. Nothing involving the hybrid electric system needs to be touched. There's no reason to feel intimidated by vehicles like this. No special tools are required, and nothing needs to be reprogrammed. The truth is that the systems on both hybrid and fully electric vehicles tend to be reliable. What isn't reliable, however, is an internal combustion engine that's been run dry of oil. That's what happened to this engine, in case you didn't catch the last video. The little oil that was in there was also rather dark, which made sense considering the car had gone past its scheduled maintenance, according to the instrument cluster. And according to the internet, Toyota owners are notorious for not changing the oil. I have no idea whether or not this is actually true, but if you have a story to tell, please share it down in the comments. Nothing on this engine is particularly hard to reach. One thing that's usually a pain in the ass on front-wheel drive cars is accessing the accessories. Since this car is electric, all the accessories are electric. Electric power steering, electric AC, and there is no alternator. So there's no reason to touch anything in that area. The only thing being driven by the belt is the water pump. In order to remove the exhaust manifold, I got under the car and unscrewed the two bolts holding the exhaust to the engine. This was where I noticed the little hole in the block. We talked about that in the last video. Two 14mm nuts connected the downpipe to the exhaust. Then it was five 12mm nuts that held the manifold to the cylinder head. Then the manifold came off. In the video, you might notice me fiddling with the wiring harness. That's because I was figuring this out as I went. I was just unplugging and unbolting everything I saw until there was a clear direction. Hindsight is 20/20. If I were to do this again, it would of course take me about half the time it took me here, but more specifically, I'd first pull the exhaust manifold, then unbolt the mounts on the top and the bottom so that the engine could roll forward. Then we can remove the intake manifold, which most of the wiring harness runs underneath of. Once the intake manifold is off, the wiring harness can be removed in one swoop and laid over on top of the transmission side of the car. After that, I'll reach over and unbolt the axle from the back of the engine. Next is the bottom engine mount. This can be accessed through the wheel well. I was actually able to do it without even taking the wheel off, which was nice. This is one of the only, if not the only car I've owned where I've never even had to take any of the wheels off. But anyway, the trick to completely removing that mount is to now jack up the engine a little so the bolts that hold it to the block can be accessed. Once that mount is completely removed, we roll the engine back to the correct position so we can loosely reinstall that front bottom mount. At this point, we're ready to unbolt the engine from the transmission. There are no torque converter bolts on this car because there is no torque converter. I actually didn't know this until I picked up the replacement engine right before starting work on the car. Instead of a flex plate, it has what looks like some sort of clutch mechanism and a spot for the input shaft. With that being said, there are 3 17mm bolts, 4 14mm bolts, and 1 12mm bolt that hold the engine to the transmission. Once those are removed, the engine can be pried away and lifted out of the bay. The clearance is minimal at best. I basically had to squeeze the engine out. Thankfully, nothing was damaged in the process. So that's it. The engine is out. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll install the replacement engine and get this car back on the road. So as always, I'm grinding. I hope you all are doing the same. You all stay strong, stay healthy, stay inspired. I'm out. God bless.